Greetings ladies and gentlemen, GC Smith here, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. Today we're going to be having a look at 3 cards and comparing them. Now each of these 3 cards, as you can see in the video before you, is actually rather similar. The first one here on the right is Arbor Colossus. Now this is from Feros. It's a 5 converted mana cost, 2 colours, 3 green creature. With it's a 6/6 with reach, and it has monstrous 3. Whenever this when you make it monstrous, put 3 1/1 counters on it and destroy a flyer an opponent controls. Next we have Ruric Thar, a 6 converted mana cost, 4 colourless, 1 red, 1 green. Vigilance reach, must attack every turn, and whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Ruric Thar deals 6 damage to that player. And then over here on the left, we have Sylvan Primordial. 7 converting mana cost, 5 colourless, 2 green. Reach. When it enters the battlefield, destroy a target non-creature permanent, for each opponent. And for each permanent you destroy, put a forest tapped onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library afterwards. Now it has to be a forest from your library. So, quite clearly, you can probably tell the similarity right up front now between each of these cards is reach. And you would be right. The similarity of this is each of these creatures is a green creature with reach. So is flying defense for any deck that runs green. Now, they all have reach, as I say, but each of them is kind of different in why you would add them. I think the bog standard one of these is Arbor Colossus. At 5 converted mana cost and 6/6 reach, it's rather good for flying defense. It blocks Nightveil Spectre, it blocks Chandra's Phoenix, it blocks the new Stormbreath Dragon, and at such a low cost compared to some of those cards. I mean, okay, Nightveil Spectre and Chandra's Phoenix are both 3 drop, but they only have 2 power each. Whereas the Stormbreath Dragon 4/4 with haste for 5. So it's the same converted mana cost as this, except this is a 6/6 with reach, so easily blocks and kills a Stormbreath Dragon. Now, I will admit this card is a lot more expensive to cast for non-mono green decks. If you're splashing other colours, it could end up being harder to cast due to the 3 green mana cost. But as you know from any of the other videos you watch on my channel, you'll know I'm actually currently building a mono green deck with just splashes of red for Planeswalkers. So it's such a good card for main deck because it adds such a standard standard amount of reach for its such cheap mana cost. Next up, actually, we have the Sylvan Primordial. I think this is actually the next one to expand upon after you've looked at the Arbor Colossus. So, at 7 mana cost, this is 2 mana more expensive than a Arbor Colossus to cast. But it does have 8 defense, which makes it slightly better. Simply because it can actually now profitably block Desecration Demon. It'll kill the Desecration Demon and not die in return. With Desecration Demon being a 6/6, and this is a 6/8. So it has that going for it. Unfortunately, Desecration Demon is a turn 4 play, so this might not be viable, the turn you play it. Admittedly, a lot of the green decks now have a lot of devotion, a lot of mana ramp, have a lot of ways to actually get this out early. So it can actually play turn 4. It can reasonably be played turn 4, so it's actually, kind of on curve with Desecration Demon in that sense, and so can profitably block and be rather useful. Also, unlike the fact that it can't actually get bigger, like the Arbor Colossus, which can end up profitably blocking Desecration Demon at some point, when this enters the battlefield, it destroys a non-creature permanent. So, decks that deal with a lot of Planeswalkers, a lot of enchantments, things like that, this is actually rather good because it can enter the battlefield, destroy them. Or, in fact, artifacts as well. It just enters the battlefield and destroys them. It's also actually good as well for getting rid of things like the players run that make creatures in your turn and therefore are hard to remove or make creatures in their turn hard to remove in your turn because they're unable to be hit by sorcery. This can destroy them because they're not a creature when you play this. So it's good to be playing for that. As I say, it's not going to be played. I don't think this is really much of a main board card. It's more of a sideboard card. It's like, okay, so I still need reach, so I'll sideboard out the Arbor Colossus and put this in. Simply because I need to be able to destroy things like, you know, a detention sphere, sewer safety, artifacts, planeswalkers maybe you want to get rid of, a Jace, or now an Elspeth. So this is really good at being able to deal with those sort of things, and actually with cards like Elspeth being 6 converted mana cost, and you being green having access to ramp, this is a really good card, especially since it actually ramps after you play it, and gives you an extra mana for the next turn, onwards. Next up we have Ruric Thar. This deck, this one can't be played. It's the only one of the 3 that can't actually be played in a mono green deck. It does need splashes of red, and much like Sylvan Primordial, it's something I would say is much more of a sideboard card rather than the main deck. Like the others, it has reach, and this one actually has vigilance, so it can reliably attack, and it never taps out, so it's always viable for defense after an attack against flyers. So if they're running things like, if they're playing against a blue devotion deck or a deck that just runs low-level flyers, you can happily swing with this and be able to have a blocker for their turn. Now, the problem actually with this is it has to attack, so, you don't actually get the choice of attacking, so I'm kind of glad it has vigilance, otherwise giving it reach would be kind of pointless. And that does make it vulnerable to things like combat tricks, if you don't want to fight into them, or, if you have to fight into things such as Boros Reckoner, which they can fling the damage back at this or back at you. But to be fair, I think in a lot of cases, as I say, it's a sideboard card. You would only ever side it in when that's not really an issue, because you'd sideboard it in to get hold of his final effect, which is generally he deals 6 damage to players when they cast a non-creature spell. This makes him perfect to sideboard it in against control players or burn players. So if you're playing against a guy who's like red burn or red-blue burn, you sideboard this in because he's going to be playing a lot of non-creature spells, and so he's going to, take a lot of damage when they play it. When you play it against control decks, well, these are decks that, again, like most control decks, like Esper and whatever, only run 1 creature, and maybe they'll sideboard in creatures when they play against you, but most likely not. You sideboard this in. They've only got creature, which is A-filling, and the rest of their cards are literally removal mounts and stuff. And anytime they play one of those spells, they're going to be taking 6 damage. Okay, so they can kind of remove it straight away or try and counter it, but countering's really all they can safely do. If they try and Doomblade it, or ultimate, they can't ultimate price it. If they try and Doomblade it, Hero's Downfall it, they're taking 6 damage in the process, and against a green mid-range devotion deck that can't really do that. 6 damage nullifies things like Sphinx's Revelation. Most Sphinx's Revs you're going to be getting at max maybe for 6 before the game's over. So, it neutralizes the life gain. Okay, they get card advantage. But if they cast it for less than 6, which means they need 9 mana casting for it, then they're not actually using their mana for combat tricks that turn or dealing with creatures that are attacking them, like the Ruric Thar, which will be attacking them. And at the same time, if they take, do Sphinx's Rev where X is less than 6, they're actually taking damage by they're taking net damage by Sphinx's Revving. So you're really punishing them for playing a control deck, which I really love. So if it was to come to the cards and actually say which ones you should play over the others, I would generally say, as I say, Arbor Colossus is your main board card. If you want to main board something with reach in green, or even actually you can theoretically splash. I know 3 green's costly, but with Scry and Shock Lands, it shouldn't be too bad for most decks. So I'd definitely say if you want reach, Arbor Colossus is probably the best main board option out of the 3 of these. And then Sylvan Primordial was actually probably more of a fringe sideboard card. Because decks that play a lot of enchantments, decks that play a lot of planeswalkers, will actually be affected by Ruric Thar as well. Because, sure, you can't necessarily destroy those things as easily, but whenever they're casting a planeswalker or an enchantment or anything you'd destroy with a Sylvan Primordial, they're taking 6 damage, which can rather quickly end the game. That doesn't mean you can't have both in the sideboard. I would actually have both in the sideboard. Ruric Thar would actually, in my deck, would replace Domri Raid in the main board, because you really want to be playing him against decks that don't play a lot of creatures, in which case Domri Raid is not as good as he could be. Sure, he still gives you the, his +1, which can give you card benefit, and he can give you hexproof and stuff on your creatures. But I'd much rather have just Xenagos and Garruk as my Planeswalkers in my main deck on that point. Because you don't want as many Planeswalkers when you're playing Ruric Thar, because you'll take the damage as well. And really, his fight ability is one of the reasons why he sees so much play, because he acts as pseudo removal for your deck, because you're playing such big creatures. Ruric Thar, you can afford to maybe, with Ruric Thar and your opponent taking so much damage when he destroys one of your creatures, really, he has to destroy Ruric Thar first. He's always going to be taking 6 damage from that, and if he doesn't destroy Ruric Thar first, well, he's going to be punished for that. And it also allows you to make bigger threats, and they'll go, okay, well, I'm having to Doomblade the Ruric Thar, because if I don't Doomblade the Ruric Thar, or Hero's Downfall the Ruric Thar, you'll probably just sack one of your other creatures if I played something like Devour Flesh, and then I'd end up taking more damage trying to deal with Ruric Thar as well. So he kind of allows you to safely play your other threats, because A, they can swing with him and make him safer to attack with, and also kind of he draws all the fire and does damage to them in the process. So he's a very good play. He's basically you take 6 damage if you're not playing lots of creature decks at minimum. So I love him, and he's probably the main thing I'd sideboard out. But as I say, you could run Sylvan Primordial as a 4th in your sideboard, him as a 2-4 in your sideboard, or whatever, how many you want to run on. Swap the Arbor Colossus directly for Sylvan Primordial, and run Ruric Thar in place of other things like Planeswalkers and stuff. Simply because Sylvan Primordial helps also deal with those decks as well, in a way Arbor Colossus may not be needed. So, yeah, the too long didn't watch of this video is Arbor Colossus main board, Sylvan Primordial, sideboard it in against things that run in heavy enchantments and Planeswalkers that you want to deal with, mainly enchantments because they're harder to deal with, or artifacts, and run Ruric Thar for against control, burn, things that don't run many creatures and run a lot more instant sorceries, Planeswalkers, artifacts, all those sort of things. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully I've been able to give you some information and help illuminate these 3 cards, and kind of explain better situations to play them. I know it's not, it's quite obvious stuff. It's nothing groundbreaking within these cards. But there are a lot of new players getting into Magic that may not be aware of these cards, or, Ruric Thar is actually a card that a lot of people I know have over-missed when playing Red-Green, and with Green being such a big thing at the moment, and tournaments coming up, I think these are things that people need to be aware of, just in, it's kind of information just in case they haven't been made aware of it before. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, and it definitely encourages me to do more of these videos when you like the button so much. And subscribe, obviously, to see more of these videos, because if you like it so much, I'll do more, and subscribe, you get to see them when I make them. And don't forget to comment. Tell me what you think of these cards in the description below. This is really to get a discussion going. Which of these cards would you run main board? Because this was my opinion. It may not be right. Would you run one of these main board instead of sideboard, or would you run one of these in sideboard instead of main board, like the Arbor Colossus? Would you sideboard that more than you would main board it, for instance? So, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.